I should start from the beginning. The first night I saw the man walking our cul-de-sac. I live in a quiet, boring, painfully normal suburban pocket on the edge of town. One road leads in, loops around in a circle, and that's it. A perfect dead end. No traffic, no footpaths, no reason for anyone who doesn't live here to show up. That's why my neighbors love it. Safe, they say. Predictable. Nothing ever happens here. That used to be true. Everything changed 3 weeks ago. It was a Wednesday night. I was awake later than usual, just pacing between my bedroom and kitchen because I'd had too much caffeine. It was maybe 2 a.m. when I finally decided to try to sleep. I closed the blinds, turned off the lamp, and right before crawling into bed, I heard something outside. Not loud, not alarming, just footsteps. Slow ones. My bedroom window faces the street. From the angle of my blinds, I could see maybe 30% of the road, enough to catch movement if someone walked by. Normally, that would be impossible because nobody walks here that late. Hell, nobody walks here ever unless they're pushing a stroller at noon. So the footsteps caught my attention immediately. I froze and listened. Step. Scrape. Step. Pause. The rhythm was off. Too slow. Like someone dragging one foot behind them. I lifted one of the blinds just a hair. That's when I saw him. A man walking right down the middle of our cul-de-sac. No flashlight, no phone, no dog, no purpose. Just walking like he had nowhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. But it wasn't just that. There was something wrong with the way he moved. His gait was twisted almost. His left foot barely lifted off the ground. His right arm hung stiff like he didn't remember he had one. His head twitched every few seconds, jerking slightly to the left like he was listening to something behind him. And the worst part? He kept turning his head toward the houses. Not looking, checking. Like he was scanning each house for signs of life, lingering in front of some windows, tilting his head like he was reading something invisible. I watched him for maybe 30 seconds frozen. Every instinct in me screamed that something was off. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't high. He wasn't confused. He was looking for something. Or someone. I let go of the blinds and backed away from the window. I listened as the footsteps faded down the street. When they were gone, I forced myself to breathe normally again and told myself it was just some guy cutting through the neighborhood. It was nothing. Except that made no sense. There's no cutting through a cul-de-sac. You walk in, you walk out the same way. There is no shortcut here. No exit. No path to anything. He had no reason to be here. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I kept replaying it in my head. I even checked the Ring camera from my front porch. I don't have motion alerts turned on, too many false triggers from cats and wind. But the camera records everything. Except that night. For some reason, the entire hour between 1:58 and 3:02 was missing. Just gone. Corrupted. I tried not to read into it. Maybe the Wi-Fi glitched. Maybe the server hiccuped. It happens. But the timing was too perfect. I didn't bring it up to anyone that day. Not at work, not to my neighbors, not to my group chat. It felt like the kind of thing nobody would believe. And even if they did, what were they supposed to do? Call 911 and say, "Hey, a guy walked funny past my house at 2 a.m." I'd sound insane. For the next 2 nights, I wasn't asleep yet. I'd gotten into the habit of checking the windows every hour or so, like some paranoid raccoon. It was around 1:45 a.m. when I noticed movement again. The same posture, the same limp, the same jerking head motion. The man was back. This time, I recorded him. I didn't have to hide the camera. He wasn't looking toward my window. He seemed fixated on the house across from mine, the Miller's place. They're an older couple, the kind who go to bed at 9 sharp every night. The man walked slowly to the curb in front of their house and stopped. Didn't move, didn't breathe, or if he did, I couldn't tell. He just stood there for what felt like a full minute. Then he tilted his head again, not toward the house, toward the front door, like he was listening. My skin crawled. I hit record. After a few seconds, he lifted his hand. Not a knock, more like he was reaching toward the door from across the yard. But then he dropped it, almost like someone stopped him, or he changed his mind. I kept filming until he limped away, disappearing into the cul-de-sac loop again. The moment he was out of sight, I grabbed my phone, opened our neighborhood group chat, and hesitated. I didn't want to scare people. I didn't want to sound paranoid. So I said the safest thing I could think of. Anyone else notice a weird guy walking around late at night? No one responded. The next day, though, I didn't need them to. Because around noon, Mrs. Miller was standing on her porch talking to one of the neighbors, and I overheard part of the conversation. She said, "Someone knocked on our door at 2 a.m., but when my husband checked, nobody was there." I nearly dropped my garbage bag on the driveway. I walked over casually, or as casually as you can when your heart is in your throat, and asked about it. She said the knock was light and strange, like fingernails instead of knuckles. But their camera didn't pick anything up. "Probably kids," her husband said. Kids? At 2 a.m.? With fingernails? That's when I knew this wasn't just a random guy out for a weird walk. He was targeting houses. Specifically, houses where people were asleep. I told myself it was a one-off incident. A weird guy with a strange gait and maybe some mental issues. Maybe he lived nearby and was just wandering. Then the third night happened. And that's when everything changed. It was 2:14 a.m. exactly. I remember the time because I checked the clock 3 times. I was lying on my couch trying to fall asleep when I heard it. Not footsteps, not scraping, but whispering. Very faint, right outside my window. At first, I thought it was the wind. It had been breezy all day, so maybe the trees were rustling. But then I heard it again, low, rhythmic, like someone muttering under their breath. I turned off the TV. The sound became clearer. I crawled to the window and peered through the blinds. And there he was, standing directly in front of my house. Not on the road, not on the sidewalk. In my yard. He wasn't facing the window, thankfully. He was turned slightly to the side, staring at my front door. But his lips were moving. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it sounded like numbers, or maybe he was counting something. Every few seconds, he'd stop, tilt his head in that unnatural way, then continue muttering. My entire body locked. I didn't breathe for at least 20 seconds. Then something worse happened. He stepped closer. Not toward my door, toward my window. If he had leaned even slightly forward, he could have seen me crouching there like a terrified child. I backed away slowly, trying not to make the floor creak. My hands shook so hard, I nearly dropped my phone. I considered calling 911, but what was I supposed to say? "Hi, there's a man in my yard whispering at my house." By the time I built up the nerve to peek again, he was already walking away, that same uneven, unnatural limp dragging behind him. But this time, he didn't finish the loop. He didn't go toward the exit street. He disappeared between two houses like he lived here. Except he doesn't, because I know every person in this cul-de-sac. We all do. The next morning, I sent the video I recorded to two of my neighbors privately. Neither of them replied immediately. Then around 4 p.m., one finally texted back. "I've seen him too. Twice. Don't go outside at night." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just me. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't paranoid. We have a problem. A real one. And it's getting worse. Because last night, the fourth sighting wasn't him just checking houses. He did something different, something deliberate, something targeted. He walked the cul-de-sac again, but this time, he stopped in front of every house, counting, whispering, memorizing something. And when he reached my house, he didn't just look. He smiled. Not a normal smile. A weird, crooked, too wide grin, like someone who didn't understand how smiling works. I don't know what he wants. I don't know why he's here. I don't know what he's planning. But I do know one thing. We're not dealing with someone passing through. He's not lost. He's not confused. He's not harmless. He's watching us, studying us, learning our routines. And I think he's getting ready to do something really, really bad. The night after I saw him smiling at my house, I slept with the lights on. I'm not proud of that, but I'm not ashamed either. Fear does weird things to your pride. For most of the night, nothing happened. No footsteps, no whispering, no movement. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off. By 7 a.m., the group chat was exploding. My phone buzzed nonstop while I was brushing my teeth. At first, I thought it was just some HOA complaint about trash cans being left out. But when I opened the messages, my stomach dropped. 4 neighbors had posted screenshots from their Ring cameras, all taken around the same time, between 2:09 and 2:15 a.m. All showing the same man, the limp, the stiff arm, the twitching head, and worst of all, the same pattern of behavior. He wasn't just passing by. He was pausing at each house's driveway entrance, just long enough to look, to listen, to think. The screenshots were blurry, as most night cams are, but clear enough to see his posture. His face was always angled away, as if he somehow knew where every camera was. Nobody said the word intruder in the chat. Nobody wanted to be the one to escalate it. They used phrases like stranger, trespasser, and that man again. Everyone danced around the fear, unwilling to name it out loud. But there was one message that hit me harder than the rest. From a neighbor 3 houses down. He tried my doorknob.
The message was followed by a clip, 3 seconds long, of the man standing at their front step. You can see his hands reach out. You can see the knob rattle. The house lights were off. Everyone was asleep. He didn't knock. He didn't call out. He just tested the lock like he was checking an item off a list. The people in the chat freaked out. Panic emojis, question marks, people asking if they should call the police. One guy, Mark, said he'd seen the man 3 times in the past week but thought it was just some drunk homeless person. Another said they saw him at the end of the street staring into a storm drain for like 20 minutes. The police finally showed up around noon after enough people filed online reports. 2 officers walked door to door asking questions, taking descriptions, pretending they cared. I told them what I saw, how the man walked, how he smiled at me, how he whispered outside my window. They nodded politely, but I could tell they weren't buying it.
The younger cop asked, "Did he threaten you directly?" "No," I answered. "Did he have a weapon?" "Not that I saw." "Did he enter your home?" "No." Then he shrugged in that exhausted way cops do when they're about to give you an answer you're not going to like. "We can increase patrols," he said. "But if he hasn't committed a crime, there's not much we can do." "He tried someone's doorknob," I argued. The cop sighed. "Unfortunately, unless he actually attempted to enter, not just touch the knob, we can't classify it as attempted break-in." My mouth went dry. "So you're telling us to just wait until he gets inside someone's house?" The officers exchanged a look that said, "We're saying there's nothing we can do until something bad happens." They left soon after. That night, the neighborhood felt tense. People turned on their porch lights early. A few dads walked around pretending to check their mailboxes, even though it was dead pitch. I saw one guy across the cul-de-sac installing an additional floodlight above his garage. Another nailed a "private property, no trespassing" sign to a tree like it was going to magically repel danger. Everyone was scared. No one said it, but we all knew something was wrong with that man, something deliberate. I stayed up again, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Sleep felt impossible. The timeline had become almost predictable now. He came every 2 to 3 nights, always between 2 and 2:30 a.m., always the same walk, always the same scanning behavior. But that night, the 5th night, he didn't show. Not at 2, not at 2:14, not at all. I thought maybe the police car that drove by twice had scared him off. I even let myself relax a little. That was my mistake. Because the next morning, 3 houses woke up to find papers left on their porches. Not notes, not letters, photographs. Blurry black and white pictures of the all 3 houses, taken at night from outside their bedroom windows. I wasn't one of the houses targeted, but seeing the pictures in the group chat made my stomach drop because I recognized them instantly. Every photo angle matched the spots the man had stopped on previous nights. He wasn't wandering randomly. He wasn't lost. He wasn't mentally gone. He was mapping us, watching us, tracking us, documenting us, and now leaving trophies. The photos weren't taped or placed neatly. They were scattered, like he dropped them while standing there, like he'd been interrupted. One neighbor picked up a sheet with trembling hands and said, "This was taken right outside my bedroom window. My daughter sleeps on the other side of that wall." I didn't know what to say. That evening, I sat outside on my porch steps,
watching the sun go down over the cul-de-sac. For the first time since moving here, the neighborhood didn't feel like a neighborhood. It felt like a target. All of us sitting ducks at the dead end. A place with no escape. I didn't see the man that night, or the night after, but the tension tightened instead of fading. Every minor noise made people jump. A car door, someone peeked through blinds. A dog barking, someone whispered, "Is he back?" And then 2 nights ago, something new happened. My neighbor, Daniel, a guy in his 30s who lives directly across from me, knocked on my door. He never knocks. He's polite but quiet, the kind of guy who nods from across the lawn and keeps to himself. He looked pale. "You're the one who saw him first, right?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah." He swallowed hard. "Then you need to see what's on my camera." He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. I expected to see the same thing as everyone else, the man limping, staring, pausing. But this footage was different. It was from 3:47 a.m., which was strange because the man had never appeared that late before. Daniel's camera pointed at the side of his house. You could see the flower beds, the path to the backyard, the fence gate. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, the fence gate creaked open, very softly. The man stepped through. Only this time, he wasn't limping. He wasn't twitching. He wasn't scanning. He walked smoothly, deliberately. He looked straight into the camera lens, straight into it. Then something I still can't explain happened. He raised his finger to his lips. A shush. A slow, almost gentle shh motion. But his eyes were wide, too wide. Then he turned and walked out of frame with a normal stride, not dragging his foot, not stiff, not crooked. It was all an act. The limp, the twitching, the weird movements, a performance. He wanted us to think he was unstable, unpredictable, mentally gone, because it made him harder to track, harder to categorize, harder to report. But in that single moment, he revealed everything. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew where the cameras were. He knew what the neighborhood thought of him. He was in control. When I handed Daniel's phone back, my hands were trembling. "That's not the worst part," he whispered. I looked up. "What?" He pointed at the timestamp. 3:47 a.m. "You know what's strange?" he said. "My dog barked like crazy at exactly 3:45. Not at the backyard, but at my daughter's room. Like he sensed something outside her window." I felt cold. Very cold. Because I realized something in that moment. He's changing his pattern, adapting, experimenting. And the neighbors are no longer just noticing him. They're being studied by him. We all are. He's learning which houses wake up easily, which cameras lag, which windows have no blinds, which yards have gaps in fences, which porches creak, which doors have loose locks. This isn't random wandering. It's reconnaissance. And the scariest part, nobody knows what he's preparing for. But we all feel it. Every night, tension coils tighter. Every shadow looks wrong.
Every rustle feels deliberate. Everyone is waiting for something to happen. And deep down, Every single person in this cul-de-sac knows the truth. Whatever he's planning, it's getting closer. 2 days after Daniel showed me the footage of the man walking normally, no limp, no twitch, the neighborhood finally snapped. It started when Mrs. Cormack, the old lady who lives at the house closest to the dead-end turn, called 911 because she woke up to the man standing in her driveway at 4:10 a.m. No camera footage this time. Her motion light went out a week earlier. She saw him from her bedroom window. She described him as calm, patient, waiting. That word, waiting, spread through the neighborhood in whispers. By noon, everyone had agreed to meet in front of my house, since it's the most central. 13 adults, 2 teenagers, all of us pretending not to panic. People talked over each other. He's scouting houses. He's watching kids. He's living in the woods. He's waiting for the right moment. Everyone had a theory. Nobody had a solution. The police had already been called multiple times with nothing to show for it. "We'll increase patrols," they kept saying, which translated to, "You're on your own." Mark, the guy with the floodlights, slammed his fist into his palm. "We need to do something tonight. If he comes back, we need to confront him." Everyone murmured in agreement. Everyone except me. I felt a coldness crawl up my spine. Confront him? A man who had been casing our homes, recording us, testing our locks, pretending to limp one night and walking perfectly the next? That wasn't a man you confronted. That was a man you avoided. But the desperation in the cul-de-sac was thick. Fear makes people overconfident. Fear makes people stupid. We agreed on a system. Keep phones charged. Keep Ring cameras on live view. Turn porch lights on. If anyone saw him, send a single message to the group chat. "He's here." Everyone would come outside. Strength in numbers or whatever. Looking back, the plan was pathetic, but it made people feel better, so we went with it. The night everything came to a head wasn't stormy or windy or dramatic. It was clear, still, cold. The kind of cold where sound travels farther. I stayed up again, sitting on my couch with the curtains slightly open. Nothing happened until 2:42 a.m. That's when my phone buzzed. A single message. "He's here." It was from Daniel. My heart started pounding before my feet even touched the floor. I grabbed my hoodie and stepped outside. Within seconds, doors opened down the street. Sleepy, terrified neighbors stepping onto their porches. Daniel was standing in the middle of the road, pointing toward the dead-end turn. I followed his gaze. And there he was, the man, standing under the only dead street lamp in the cul-de-sac. Perfectly still. No limp, no twitch, hands in his pockets, head slightly down, like he'd been waiting for us, like he'd planned this moment. Someone whispered, "Jesus Christ!" Another whispered, "Call the police." Nobody moved. Finally, Mark stepped forward. He had a baseball bat. "I'm warning you. Leave. Now." The man didn't react, didn't look, didn't flinch. He just slowly lifted his head, and even from a distance, you could feel the weight of his stare. Calm, cold,
assessing. That was the exact moment I realized he wasn't afraid of us. He wasn't here to hide. He wasn't confused or lost. He was enjoying this. He was playing. Mark took a few more steps. "Did you hear me? Leave!" Still nothing. Then, very slowly, the man leaned sideways, just his upper body, a strange, unnatural tilt, like he was observing the houses behind us instead of the people threatening him. Then he turned and walked away. Not toward the woods, not toward the highways. He walked straight into the darkness at the end of the cul-de-sac, disappearing between the last two houses, a narrow alleyway that led nowhere. The meeting dissolved in frantic whispers. "He's hiding. He's waiting. He's going behind houses. What if he circles around?" People rushed back inside, locked doors, peered out windows. But I stayed outside because I had noticed something nobody else did. When the man walked away, something slipped from his pocket. Something small, metallic. I walked toward where he'd been standing, slowly, carefully. My flashlight hit the object. A key. One single house key. But the plastic top wasn't generic. It was bright blue. I recognized it instantly. It was my spare key, the one I kept in a magnetic box under my grill. Or used to. My throat tightened. My hands went cold. He'd been in my backyard. Maybe more. I didn't tell the neighbors. Not right then. Because the truth was too heavy to drop in the middle of the chaos. I pocketed the key and went home.
The next night was the worst night of my life. Not because he broke in, not because he spoke to me, not because he tried anything violent. What he did was worse. He made it clear that he could have. It started at 3:18 a.m. My hallway creaked. I froze. Then the front porch light flickered. Just once. Then steady again. I checked the live camera feed. Nothing. But something still felt wrong. I went to my bedroom and peeked through the blinds, expecting nothing. Instead, I saw a silhouette standing in my yard. Not at the driveway, not at the door. 2 feet from my bedroom window. Staring upward. Head tilted. Motionless. My breath stopped. I didn't move. Didn't blink. For a long moment, it was just us. Me behind thin blinds. Him outside standing still. His chest rose and fell slowly. Calmly. He lifted both hands and placed them gently, almost tenderly, on my window. No knocking, no grabbing, just a slow, deliberate press of his palms against the glass. Then he leaned forward until his forehead touched it too. I could see condensation fogging the inside. I held my breath so he wouldn't hear me. He stayed like that for maybe 20 seconds. 20 seconds that felt like slow torture. Then he did the single most terrifying thing he'd done since this began.
He smiled. Not a twisted smile, not a creepy grin. A soft, content, peaceful smile. As if he'd been waiting to do this. As if getting this close was some kind of accomplishment. Then he turned and walked across my yard, through the side gate he must have opened earlier, and disappeared into the dark behind my neighbors' houses. I collapsed onto the floor, shaking, unable to move for several minutes. When I finally got the strength to stand, I called the police. They arrived 15 minutes later. They searched the yards, questioned neighbors, took statements. Nothing. He vanished like smoke. But the officer pointed something out that I hadn't noticed. The latch on my side gate hadn't been broken. It had been unscrewed. Carefully. Silently. He had been planning that visit. Not impulsively. With intent. The next morning, the police knocked on every door with news. They had found someone in the woods behind the cul-de-sac. Alive. And possibly connected. They didn't give details at first, but word travels fast in a neighborhood like ours. By afternoon, we knew the basics. They found a man living in a makeshift camp less than 300 feet behind the dead-end road. Tarps, blankets, a bucket, a pile of food wrappers, and an old backpack filled with a disposable camera, a notebook with house descriptions, drawings of the street, a list of names misspelled, schedules when lights turned off, a map of our cul-de-sac, and worst of all,
Keys. Dozens of keys. Not stolen from inside homes, no signs of break-ins, but from yards, sheds, under rocks, inside mailboxes, under grills, hidden in flower pots, including mine. The man they arrested wasn't some escaped convict or wanted killer. He was a mentally unstable drifter who had been roaming different towns for months. Not violent, not known for attacking people, just unpredictable, erratic, obsessive. The cops said he'd fixated on quiet streets, especially dead ends, especially ones where people left spare keys lying around. His limp? An act he admitted to. He said, and this is the part that haunts me, that acting broken made people underestimate him. When asked why he stared into windows, he shrugged and said, I liked seeing how people looked when they didn't know they were being watched. When asked why he smiled at my window, he said, that house felt safe to me. Safe. My house. My window. Me. He didn't understand why what he did was terrifying. And that's almost worse. They took him to a psychiatric facility. He won't be coming back. But here's the truth nobody in my neighborhood wants to admit. He didn't break in because he didn't want to. Not because he couldn't. He had the keys. He had access. He had opportunity. He unlocked my gate. He came to my window. He watched us for weeks, all out of some twisted, harmless-seeming compulsion. And that's the part that keeps me awake even now, knowing that the only reason I'm alive is because he simply never chose to come inside. Not because of locks,
Not because of neighbors, not because of cameras, just because he didn't feel like it. The cul-de-sac feels different now. Nobody lets their kids play outside. Porch lights stay on all night. People refer to him as that man in hushed tones. But the worst part? Sometimes late at night, I still imagine him standing outside my window, smiling softly, like he's finally found the house that feels safest to him.